The snow had begun earlier than anyone expected that year. It fell thick and heavy over the small village of Ardenbroek, a factory town nestled near the eastern front of a war-torn Europe. Winter was always harsh here, but this time the cold felt different, angrier, as if the very wind held a grudge against the living. Houses shivered under the weight of frost, families rationed the last remains of dried grains, and hope, once abundant like spring water, now hid under layers of fear and ice. In a small cottage at the edge of the village lived a girl named Alara Voss. She was 12 years old, thin as a sparrow but with eyes bright like the last ember of a dying fire. Every morning, before dawn broke through the frozen silence, Alara walked to the river. Not just any river, but the Saran, a wide silver ribbon now completely frozen, stretching like a mirror into forever. She came here for one reason: to wait. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck as snowflakes settled on her lashes. "He'll come back," she whispered to herself, breath turning into a mist that drifted upward like a prayer. He promised. The one she waited for was her father, Captain Elias Voss of the Defense Regiment. He had left over a year ago, when the war escalated and the threat drew closer than anyone dared to imagine. He had kissed Alara on the forehead and promised, "Whenever the river freezes, I'll cross it to come home to you." Last winter, the river never froze completely. But this year, it was frozen solid. So she waited. Every morning. Every evening. No matter the cold. No matter the hunger gnawing at her ribs. And the villagers saw her. They shook their heads. Some pitied her. Others whispered behind their doors. "She's holding on to false hope," they said. But Alara refused to believe in a world where her father's promise was a lie. The cottage she returned to was little warmer than outside. Her mother, Mara, sat near the fireplace, a fireplace with no fire. She knelt in front of it, pretending the ashes still held warmth, rubbing her hands as if the motion alone could summon heat. "You were at the river again," her mother said softly without turning. Alara removed her boots slowly, so the holes in the soles wouldn't show. "Only for a bit." "A bit is too long in this cold," Mara replied. Her voice was tired, like a bowstring stretched past its limit. Alara didn't answer. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable, it was survival. Finally, Mara turned around. Her cheeks were hollow, her skin dull from hunger and worry. But when she looked at Alara, some part of her still tried to glow. She opened her arms, inviting the girl into a fragile embrace. Alara hesitated only a moment before stepping into it. Here, in her mother's trembling arms, she allowed herself to be small and scared. "You must save your strength," Mara whispered into her hair. "For your father. He would want that." Alara nodded, even though she didn't fully understand. She thought hope was strength. She thought waiting was strength. But maybe strength was something else, something harder. Later that afternoon, Alara helped her mother barter scarves she knitted from salvaged wool. Most villagers had little left to trade. Bread was a treasure. Wood was nearly sacred. People lived off potatoes stored months ago, now shriveled and soft with rot. Children dug through snow for mushrooms or edible roots. At the market square, fewer stalls stood each week. The fountain in the center was a pillar of jagged ice, a monument to the world's suffering. A baker with cracked lips and sorrow-filled eyes examined one of Mara's scarves. "Beautiful work, Mara," he murmured. "But all I can offer is half a loaf. It isn't fresh." "It will do," Mara said quickly. The baker wrapped it in paper as if giving away gold. His hands shook, though from cold or guilt, no one knew. Alara carried the bread carefully, cherishing its weight. She remembered a time when her father lifted her on his shoulders and bought her sweet rolls dusted with powdered sugar, winter treats that tasted like holidays and laughter. Now even memories felt too expensive. At dusk, the ground glowed under a pale moon. The cold bit deeper. Yet Alara slipped outside again and returned to the river. The frozen water crackled beneath tiny fractures, singing eerie notes like distant glass bells. She dug in the snow near a large boulder and pulled out a tin box she had hidden. Inside were letters, every one of them written by her father. She opened the last one he sent. My brave Alara. If the river freezes, it means winter has come harsher than ever. But it also means the way home is open. I will walk the ice back to you. Wait for me by the Saran when the snow is deepest. I love you more than all the stars. Papa. His handwriting was confident. Strong. Full of life. She held the paper to her chest, eyes closed. Tomorrow, she breathed. Perhaps tomorrow. When the wind howled, she imagined it was answering her. That night, the village siren wailed. Alara jerked awake to chaos, shouting, boots pounding, doors slamming. Outside, soldiers rushed down the street, rifles ready. Red flares lit the sky, turning snow into blood-colored flames. Mara grabbed Alara's wrist. Get your coat. We must go to the shelter. What's happening? The front is near. A neighbor screamed as she ran past with her toddler. Gunfire crackled in the distance, sharp, merciless. Alara's heart pounded. She stumbled as her mother pulled her toward the community cellar beneath the church. But halfway there, Alara froze. Not from cold, fear. She stared toward the river. There were figures moving. Dark shapes against the white night. Soldiers. Her pulse raced wildly. Could one of them be? Alara, her mother snapped, shaking her. What are you doing? We have to go. Alara tore her gaze away and followed. Underground, villagers huddled together in terror. Babies cried. Men clenched their fists uselessly. Women whispered prayers as dust fell from trembling beams above. After an hour, the gunfire subsided. The world quieted again. When dawn slipped through cracks in the cellar walls, the door opened. The soldiers were gone. The danger had passed. But not without cost. 2 homes burned. A horse lay still in the snow. And a young man, barely older than 16, remained lying near the village gates, his blood frozen into a crimson halo. Alara stared. She had never seen death this close before. It made the war real in a way her imagination could not. She gripped her mother's hand tighter. That evening, Mara sat Alara down beside the dim candlelight. Alara, we must speak of your father. Alara's stomach dropped. She didn't want this conversation. Mara's voice cracked, but she forced the words out. There are rumors that his regiment was defeated. Many did not survive. No, Alara shook her head fiercely. He's alive. He promised. Promises don't always survive war, Mara whispered. Alara stood abruptly, tears burning her eyes. No. He will come back. The river froze. Mara reached for her, but Alara stepped away as it burned. You don't believe anymore, Alara accused. Mara didn't answer. The silence told Alara enough. And it hurt more than the cold ever could. That night, while her mother slept, Alara crept out again. The moonlight shimmered upon the frozen Saran like polished steel. Alara walked to the center of the ice, careful but determined. She stared into the distance where the river disappeared into a forest of blackened trees. If her father was coming, it would be from there. "I'll wait right here," she whispered. "I'll wait every night if I must." The wind answered with a long, sorrowful sigh. The temperature dropped further, small crystals forming instantly upon her tears. She shivered violently, but still she stood, tiny and fragile against the vastness of winter. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Her knees weakened, but she refused to sit. Then, in the quiet, a sound. A faint crunch. Footsteps on snow? Alara's breath caught. Her heart thundered. She squinted toward the far side of the river. A shadow. Someone, or something, was moving. Coming closer. Her body trembled, not from cold now but from hope blazing too bright. "Papa," she called out, voice cracking. The figure paused. Alara took a step, slipping on the ice. She steadied herself. "Papa," she cried again, louder. The shadow resumed moving, slowly, each step deliberate, cautious. Alara ran, heart bursting with joy and terror. "Papa!" But when she reached the middle of the river, the figure came into full view. And it was not her father. It was a soldier, but not from her homeland. His uniform was different, darker. His eyes were sharp and weary beneath a helmet dusted with snow. He lifted his hand slowly, as if not to scare her. Alara's hope shattered like thin ice. She stumbled back, breath ragged. The soldier didn't speak her language, but in his expression she saw the same exhaustion that lived in every villager she knew. The war had claimed pieces of him too. He pointed toward the village, urging her to return. She shook her head, tears falling freely. "You're not him." His face softened. He stepped closer, carefully, and removed something from his coat. A small metal badge. Alara gasped. It was her father's insignia. Her knees buckled. The soldier quickly caught her arms to keep her from falling. "How?" she whispered in a broken sob. The soldier bowed his head, eyes full of apology. Alara understood. Her father was not crossing the river. Her father was not coming home. Not now. Not ever. But then, the soldier pointed again at the village. And gently, so gently, he pressed the badge into her palm and closed her fingers around it. The enemy was not always the monster. Sometimes the enemy was just another lost soul carrying the last piece of someone you loved. Alara looked at the badge, clutching it so tight the edges hurt. She stared at the soldier again, and for the first time since the war began, she felt something new. Not hope for her father's return, but hope that kindness could survive even in times like these. The soldier nodded once more. Then he turned and disappeared back into the night, leaving only footprints that the wind quickly filled with snow. Alara stayed there, alone in the center of the frozen river, shaking, but not from the cold. Her father wasn't coming home. But his promise still lived inside her. Tomorrow, she would still come to the river. Not to wait, but to remember. And because deep within her heart, one truth remained. The river never forgot. The sun did not rise quickly in Ardenbrook anymore. It crept slowly, weak, tired, barely strong enough to pierce through the dense gray sky that blanketed the village like a coffin lid. The morning after Alara met the foreign soldier on the frozen river, she awoke with a weight on her chest heavier than any snow. Her father was gone. No amount of waiting would change that now. She reached beneath her pillow and took out the small metal badge the soldier had returned to her. It was cold against her skin, a cruel truth made of steel. A truth she wasn't ready to accept, and yet could not deny. Mara stirred beside her, eyes red and swollen from the tears she tried to hide the night before. She sat up with a pained groan, joints stiffened by the cold that winter had forced into their bones. "Elara," Mara whispered softly, brushing hair from her daughter's face. "We have much to do today." Elara nodded. Words were too heavy in her throat for speech. She wrapped the scarf her mother had made around her neck, tucked the badge into her coat, and followed her mother outside. The wind bit hard, stealing warmth from exposed skin like a thief in the night. The horizon looked dead, fields buried beneath layers of frost, trees skeletal and tormented by ice. Somewhere far away, the sound of distant artillery rumbled like a monster sleeping beneath the earth. War continued its slow crawl toward them. At the marketplace, if it could still be called that, villagers gathered around a military notice nailed to a post. The notice was new, ink still fresh and sharp against the battered wood. Mandatory evacuation soon. Food rationing increased. Volunteers needed. No one leaves without permission. The words made the crowd restless. Someone shouted, "Evacuation? To where? To starve somewhere else?" Another muttered curses under his breath, spitting into the snow. Elara stood close to Mara as soldiers patrolled the square. Their eyes were stern, but their faces were gaunt with exhaustion. Not even those with weapons were spared from hunger. Then a voice, a familiar one, called out from the edge of the gathering. "Elara! Over here!" It was Jonas, a boy Elara's age, with shaggy brown hair and a smile that had dimmed considerably since the war began. He held something wrapped in cloth. "I saved this for you," he said, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a small, slightly stale biscuit. Elara blinked. "Jonas? I can't." "You can," he insisted, pressing it into her hand. "You're my friend." Her lip trembled. She didn't realize how desperately she needed such kindness until it arrived. She broke the biscuit in half and handed one piece to him. They ate together quietly while the adults argued about the notice. Jonas finally asked, "You weren't at the river this morning?" Elara lowered her gaze. "No. I know now." Jonas's expression softened. He didn't ask further. He simply nodded, understanding. As noon approached, Mara found a man who was willing to trade 2 potatoes for one of her scarves. They were small and wrinkled, but food was food. Elara helped carry them home like they were precious gems. Inside their cottage, Mara set a small pot of water to boil, though the flickering flame beneath it felt more like a fragile hope than real heat. Elara sat beside the window, staring out at the frozen world. She held her father's badge again, running her thumb over the worn engraving. Captain Elias Voss. A father. A promise. A memory. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. Mara noticed, drying her hands on her apron before kneeling beside her daughter. "Elara," she began gently, "we must learn to live with what is left." "That's what I'm trying," Elara whispered. "But everything hurts." Mara pulled her into a hug. "I know." But Elara pulled away slightly, clutching the badge closer. Mara exhaled, sadness flickering in her tired gaze. "We will light a candle for him tonight," she said. "To guide him to peace." Elara hesitated. She wasn't ready to say goodbye. And lighting a candle felt like putting out the last ember of hope she carried. But she nodded anyway. Later that afternoon, a group of soldiers arrived near the riverbank. Villagers gathered again, murmuring. "What are they doing now?" "They're building something." "A barricade?" "Our river, they're cutting paths?" Elara pushed to the front, heart racing. The soldiers were scraping away snow in long strips, revealing the clear ice beneath. They hammered large iron spikes into place and drilled holes near the banks. Jonas appeared beside her. They're preparing the river for troop crossings. Alara's throat tightened. The same frozen path she had believed would bring her father back, would now bring war closer instead. Suddenly, Alara felt the badge in her pocket like a burning coal. The river wasn't a promise anymore. It was a threat. That evening, as the last faint daylight disappeared, the villagers gathered inside the church. Candles flickered along stone walls, casting long, trembling shadows. The priest, Father Oral, stood at the front wearing robes patched and frayed from years of scarcity. "Tonight we light candles not only for those we lost," he said, voice weary, "but for those still out there in the cold, fighting for life." Alara held her candle tight. Her mother lit it for her, hand steady even though her heart was breaking. The flame shimmered, tiny, fragile, like hope itself. As they prayed, gunfire cracked in the distance again. Some villagers flinched. The flame flickered. Yet it did not go out. After the prayer ended, Father Oral placed a hand on Alara's shoulder. "Your father was a brave man," he said gently. "He will be remembered." Alara bit her lip. "Do you believe the river keeps memories?" she asked. Father Oral considered this. "The river carries what we give it. If we give it hope, it holds hope. If we give it sorrow, it carries our grief." Alara looked down at her candle. "Then what should I give it now?" "That is something only you can decide," he replied. Snow fell heavier again as they walked home. The sky was a dark sea of clouds, and the moon hidden behind stormy veils. The candle in Alara's hands flickered with each gust of wind. "Hold it close to your heart," Mara reminded her. "It will shine brighter there." Alara did as she was told, but her arms soon ached, and exhaustion tugged at her eyelids with every step. Just before they reached the cottage, a loud crack split the night air. Alara gasped. The candle slipped from her hands. It dropped into the snow, flame dying instantly. "No, no, no!" Alara cried, falling to her knees to retrieve it. She brushed snow away desperately, as if she could bring the light back. But it was gone, smothered by winter. Mara knelt beside her, gently pulling her close. "It's just a candle, sweetheart." "No," Alara sobbed, voice breaking. "It was his candle." Mara hugged her tightly. "The flame wasn't in the wax or the wick. It was in you." Alara shut her eyes. She wanted so badly to believe that. But in the darkness, even the strongest flames seemed so easy to lose. The next morning, Alara woke to the faint smell of something sweet. She blinked groggily and sat up. Mara was cooking, real porridge, thin but warm, mixed with a sliver of jam they had saved for a special day. Alara frowned. "What day is it?" Mara smiled sadly. "Your father always said the first snowfall after the new year was good luck. He would have made you a sweet breakfast." Alara didn't speak. Her heart ached at the mention of him, but she ate every spoonful. The warmth spread through her body, and she allowed herself, just for a moment, to enjoy something. After breakfast, Alara insisted on going to the river. "You don't have to," Mara said carefully. "I know," Alara replied. "But I want to say goodbye properly." Her mother nodded with quiet understanding. The river looked colder than ever, its surface smooth and lifeless, like a grave of ice. The soldiers' markings remained, the iron spikes standing like jagged teeth. Alara reached the center again, heart pounding. She took out her father's badge, pressing it to her lips before lowering it into the snow. She knelt with trembling knees and whispered, Papa, thank you for loving me. I'll keep your promise here. I will be brave. Tears dripped down her cheeks, freezing instantly upon her skin. She stood, ready to leave. But then she saw a candle near her feet. She hadn't dropped it here. It wasn't hers. The wick was new. The wax untouched. Someone had placed it for her. She looked around, searching the snowy silence. No one was there. Carefully, she picked up the candle. It felt warm. Not physically, but in the way that mattered. She understood now. A flame could be lost. But the light could always be carried again. Alara wiped her cheeks and took a deep breath. I will keep going. I promise. Behind her, the wind shifted, swirling snow around her like tiny stars. The candle flickered to life. All on its own. Alara gasped softly, heart filling with a new kind of hope. A hope that didn't depend on someone returning. A hope that lived inside her. She turned toward home, holding the candle close, not as a memory of what she lost, but as a promise of what she would become. The cold world was still dark. War still marched closer. The river still remembered pain. But Alara was learning to carry a different kind of light. And one candle, even alone in the snow, could be the beginning of a miracle. For days, the river remained frozen in a silence so deep that even the wind seemed afraid to disturb it. Snow piled thick upon the banks, smoothing every edge, covering every footprint Amara left each time she came to the same spot. She stood by the river every morning, the carved wooden bird tucked inside her coat, her gaze fixed on the white horizon. She listened. She waited. But no sound came. No crack of ice. No familiar voice calling her name. The villagers had begun to talk. They spoke softly, but the cold carried gossip like a cruel echo. Some whispered that Amara still believed her father would return, that she was clinging to a ghost. Others muttered that the river had claimed him, as it had so many fishermen before him. Her mother never said a word about the waiting. She simply watched Amara with tired eyes, eyes that once sparkled with warmth but now looked dim, as if each passing day robbed her of another piece of hope. Amara refused to give in. One bitter afternoon, as the sky darkened early and the world outside seemed frozen in time, she marched once more to the river. Her boots crunched against the crusted snow. Her breath formed tiny clouds that vanished too quickly. The trees lining the river wore long icicles like sharp fangs, glinting in the fading sunlight. A storm was coming. She could feel it. She stood at her usual place on the bank, tracing the shape of the wooden bird with her fingers. She imagined it alive, wings outstretched, ready to dive into the sky in search of her father. She whispered to the wind, hoping the river might deliver her voice to wherever he was. Come back to me. The wind did not answer. But something else did. A faint crack echoed across the ice. Amara's breath seized in her throat. She leaned forward, eyes searching the frozen surface. The sound came again, sharper, closer. A fracture snaked across the river, thin as a thread, glowing faintly under the ice like lightning trapped beneath glass. Then she saw him. A figure stood at the far side of the river, tall, wrapped in a coat of rough fur, snow crusted on his shoulders. His face was shadowed beneath a hood, but Amara could see his posture, still but alert, as if he too were waiting. Her heart pounded. Her father? No, the shoulders were too broad, the stance unfamiliar. And yet, something about him made her chest tighten. The stranger raised a hand. Not waving, beckoning. Amara stepped forward, her boot touching the ice. It groaned beneath her weight. A sharp fear stabbed into her ribs. She knew better, even in deep winter, the river could betray anyone who dared its surface. Her father taught her that. The stranger took a step closer. Amara froze. Her gloved hands curled into fists. "Who are you?" she called out, her voice cracking. The wind answered, snatching her words and scattering them. But the stranger seemed to understand. His reply drifted faintly across the river. "Not an enemy." Amara remained where she was, torn between caution and desperate hope. "Did you see him?" she tried again. "My father?" The stranger paused. Slowly, he lifted his other hand, something gleamed there. A piece of dark wood, small enough to fit in a palm. A carving. Her lungs forgot to work. It was a second bird. Her father had carved only two, one for himself, one for her. "How did you?" Her voice was stolen by shock. The stranger didn't speak. He laid the carving gently on the ice. Then he tapped his chest with a fist, a single, solemn gesture, and turned away. "Wait!" Amara cried, stepping fully onto the ice before she realized what she was doing. The ice creaked dangerously. Long white cracks crawled beneath her feet like warning serpents. She stumbled back to the safety of the snowbank, her heart hammering. When she looked up again, the stranger was gone, swallowed by the storm beginning to churn at the edge of the forest. Amara dropped to her knees, reaching for the carved bird from where she stood, arms stretched desperately. But it was too far, resting halfway along the ice, alone under the bruised gray sky. She stared at it, breath shaking. Her father's carving. Proof he was still alive. Unless... No. She refused the darker thought that tried to creep into her mind, that someone might have found it after something happened. She gripped her wooden bird tightly and stood up. The storm howled louder, whipping her hair into her eyes. Snow began to fall in fierce, swirling flurries, erasing the stranger's tracks before she could even see where he might have gone. Amara turned and ran all the way home. Her mother was waiting by the door, fear etched into her features. "Where were you?" The storm, she stopped when she saw Amara's expression. Amara lifted the wooden bird she always carried, then held her empty hand forward as if offering something invisible. "There's another one," she whispered. "On the ice. And, a stranger." Her mother's face drained of color faster than the daylight fading behind the windows. "No," she said quietly. "Not again. You must stay away from that river." "But he knows something," Amara cried. "He had Papa's carving." Her mother flinched, a tiny movement, but enough to show that hope, once crushed, still had the power to wound. "You're scaring yourself," she murmured, pulling Amara into her arms. "The river has a way of playing tricks on hearts that can't let go." Amara shook her head and stepped back. It wasn't a trick. He was real. The house creaked as the storm outside threw itself against the walls. Snow rattled the windows like claws scratching at the glass. The lantern light flickered. Shadows swayed. Her mother tried to pull her away from the door, but Amara's fear had twisted into stubborn determination. If the river held answers, she would not ignore them. Not again. That night, long after her mother fell asleep from worry and exhaustion, Amara lay awake, the carved bird in her hand. She stared at the ceiling and listened to the wind's roar, a restless whispering full of voices she almost recognized. She made a silent promise. Tomorrow, at dawn, she would return. And she would cross the ice if she had to. Because someone out there knew the truth. Someone had seen her father. Or had been with him. The storm raged on, wrapping the village in a shroud of white. Beneath the frozen river, something shifted in the dark water. And in her dreams, Amara saw the stranger's shadow again, waiting. The storm had raged all night, roaring against rooftops like a beast trying to claw its way into the village. Amara barely slept. Every time the wind howled, she jolted awake, half expecting to see the stranger's shadow by the window. Morning came in a pale gray hush. The world looked buried under white silence. Amara stepped outside cautiously. Her boots sank deep into fresh snow, each footstep leaving a soft, temporary mark. The snowflakes were still falling, gentle but constant, as if the sky had forgotten how to stop grieving. The frozen river looked smoother than glass today. There was no hint of footprints, no sign that anything, or anyone, had stood there last night. It made her wonder. Was he real? Or just a dream created by hunger and cold? She took a deep breath. The air felt sharp enough to cut. The stranger's first message. When Amara reached the river's edge, she noticed something curious. A small path had been cleared on the ice, narrow but distinctly made by a person's boots. They led only halfway across the river, then vanished. Like someone who lived between worlds. Someone who never fully arrived. There, pressed into the ice, she found a tiny folded note, weighted down by a smooth, dark stone. Her hands trembled as she opened it. If you can read this, then you must still believe. I will return. Keep the river in your heart. The writing was careful, neat, strangely elegant compared to the rough world around her. She clutched the paper close to her chest, heart racing. Someone cared enough to write. Someone saw her waiting. Someone promised to come back. For the first time in weeks, she felt something warm under her ribs. Hope. A villager watching. As she turned to walk home, she noticed old Mr. Novak leaning on his cane near the road. His eyebrows were frosted white and his breath showed in clouds. "What are you doing out here alone, child?" he asked, voice rough with age and suspicion. Amara hesitated. How could she explain something she didn't even understand? "I like the river," she answered simply. Mr. Novak narrowed his eyes. "You stay away from the far bank," he warned. "No one who goes near the enemy side ever returns." Amara's throat tightened. Her father had gone to the enemy side. He had not returned. She nodded and hurried home before the old man could ask more. Warmth, for a moment. Inside the cottage, Mother prepared the thinnest soup imaginable, just melted snow with a potato so shriveled it barely flavored the water. But Amara didn't care. She had a secret now. Something precious and fragile. "Where were you?" Mother asked, stirring slowly with tired hands. "Just by the river," Amara replied. Mother sighed. "That river takes more than it gives," she whispered. Amara thought differently. The river remembered. The river brought messages. The river kept her father's shadow alive. Night falls too soon. Daylight never stayed long in winter. As dusk approached, soldiers marched into the square again, their boots crunching through the fresh snow. They hammered new posters onto the wooden walls, ration cuts, stricter curfews, warnings of infiltrators. Tomas watched, hiding behind his mother, fear widening his eyes. Amara watched too, but she was drawn back toward the river like a needle toward a magnet. Something inside her insisted. He will return tonight. So when the moon rose, fat and silver, she slipped outside, candle in hand, and followed the snow-sparkling path back to the river. Reunion on the ice. This time, she didn't have to search. He was already there. A tall figure wrapped in a thick coat of wolf-gray fur, collar dusted with snow. The moon revealed the tired lines on his face, and something deeper in his eyes. Grief. Fatigue. A yearning she recognized. "You came back," she whispered. He nodded silently. They stood facing each other on the frozen surface, a river's width of emotion between them. "Why are you here?" Amara finally asked. He knelt slowly, as if bowing to the ice. "I wait," he said. "For who?" He looked up at her, breath misting in the cold. "For someone very important, someone I lost." Amara's heart pounded. "A daughter?" she asked, voice trembling. The man closed his eyes, snowflakes landing gently on his eyelashes. "Yes," he breathed. "My daughter." The truth in the wind. The wind howled across the ice, swirling snow around them like ghosts of forgotten days. Amara clutched her candle tighter. "Where is she?" "On your side of the river," he murmured. "Somewhere. I've searched every night." His voice cracked, a sound of a man held together only by sheer will. Amara's breath hitched. Her fingers tightened around the wooden bird inside her pocket. Hope bloomed inside her chest with frightening force. "Maybe." Her voice faltered, tears pricking her eyes. "Maybe she's waiting for you too." He stepped forward one small pace. The ice groaned under his weight. "No farther," she gasped. "The ice." He froze. Their eyes met. He gave a sad, knowing smile. "I know," he whispered. A shiver of fate. Suddenly a blast of wind blew the candle flame sideways. The light flickered wildly, then went out. Darkness swallowed everything except the moon. Amara's heart thudded unevenly. Fear surged up her spine. When she looked again, he was already walking backward toward the mist, boot prints fading as quickly as they formed. "No. Wait," she cried, stepping toward him. But the ice beneath her feet cracked, a loud warning. She froze. The man stopped too, just at the border of swirling snow. He raised a hand, palm open, gentle. "I will return," he said again. "And next time, I hope you will not fear the river." Then he vanished into the blizzard's white curtain, like a ghost returning to winter. A promise for tomorrow. Amara stood alone, breathing hard. The cold bit deep through her coat. But the fear inside her heart slowly melted, replaced by determination. The river was dangerous. The world was cruel. War stole everything it could. But love still crossed frozen borders. She picked up the candle, shielding it from the wind with her trembling, brave hands. Tomorrow, she would come back again. And she would be ready. Because she knew now. Someone else waited on the frozen river too. The next day, winter arrived with a sharper cruelty. Snow piled high against cottage doors. Ice clung to eyelashes. Villagers moved slowly, every step a battle against the cold that wanted to claim them. Amara was no exception. She wrapped her scarf twice around her face as she made her usual journey to the river, the note safely tucked in her pocket. But today, something else waited there. A man's voice. Rough. Urgent. "Stop right there." Amara froze, heart hammering, as three soldiers approached from the woods. They wore helmets dusted white by snow, rifles slung across their backs. The captain, a tall man with deep lines in his face, stared at her sharply. "What are you doing out here?" he demanded. "I'm just walking," she murmured, trembling. "Walking?" His tone sharpened. "Near the border river?" He stepped closer, boots crunching through snow. "Have you seen anyone cross? Or try to signal from the other side?" Amara's lips parted, but no words came. She clutched her pockets tightly, the note, her secret, burned against her hands like fire. The captain studied her narrowed eyes. Young. Harmless. But full of secrets. He exhaled sharply and motioned the others away. "Go home, child," he muttered. "Winter isn't the only thing that can kill you here." Amara didn't need to be told twice. She hurried back, boots slipping on ice as fear chased her all the way home. Rumors in the village. By midday, every doorway held frightened whispers. "Tentara musumin koba menyulinap dari sunge," one woman murmured. "They say a spy has been seen at night," another added. "Maybe even living among us." Children hid behind coats. Mothers hugged their little ones close. Everyone stared suspiciously at everyone else. Tomas found Amara beside the old well. "You're shaking," he said quietly. "Are you cold?" She wasn't. Not from the weather. Tomas pulled something from his pocket, a tiny strip of cloth. Dirty, frayed, with a symbol stitched in red thread. An insignia. "I found this buried in the snow near the river." Amara's pulse roared in her ears. She recognized it. The stranger's coat had carried that very mark. The insignia of the enemy. Tomas looked around nervously and whispered. "They're searching for the owner. If they find him..." He didn't finish. The soldiers' posters told enough, spies were shot without question. He pressed the insignia into Amara's palm. "Hide it," he urged. "Before they think one of our families is helping him." She nodded, fingers closing around the cold fabric. Suddenly the world felt heavier. She remembered the man's tired eyes. His voice when he spoke of his missing daughter. The grief he carried. He was no spy. He was a father. But the war did not care about truth. Night of the half moon. That night, Amara waited until the village slept. She slipped outside quietly and hurried to the frozen river. The half-moon hung low, casting sharp silver light across the ice. No footprints this time. No shadowy figure. Only the vast, breathless silence of winter. "Where are you?" she whispered. Then something glinted near the center of the river. She stepped closer, carefully, breath steaming in the cold air. There, a small metal pendant lay half buried in snow. She brushed it off with shaking hands. It was a badge, a military crest. The same insignia Tomas had found. The stranger's insignia. As she stared at it, her heartbeat stuttered. There were letters engraved on the back. A name. Her father's name. A shocking realization. Her knees nearly gave out. "No," she whispered, voice cracking. Her father's coat had carried this mark too. His letters had mentioned it. The unit he served in. The one stationed across the river. Her breath faltered as the truth collided inside her. The stranger. The man who searched every night. The one waiting with so much sorrow. He wasn't just any soldier from the enemy side. He was her father. Her heart surged painfully, joy and fear tangling like wires. She had found him. He was alive. He was here. Snow stirred around her as the wind whispered like a warning. Footsteps. She jerked around. Torches approached, multiple soldiers, rifles raised, searching across the ice. And through the swirling snow, she heard it. A voice she recognized. Amara. It came from the other side of the river. Her father's voice. The line between life and death. For a second, the world froze with her. Her father stood at the edge of the enemy's trees, hands raised, face illuminated by the moon. His eyes, full of fear, were locked on hers. "Don't move," he shouted. "Run." But the soldiers behind Amara were already raising their guns. "Enemy soldier at the river," a voice roared. A crack of gunfire shattered the night. The ice between them splintered in a jagged line. Amara screamed. "Father!" He dashed forward. Toward her. Toward danger. Toward everything he'd ever hoped to protect. Snow exploded around them as bullets tore through the night. And she realized. Hope had drawn her father to the river. But war had followed. Gunfire cracked through the frozen night again. Snow exploded around Amara as she dropped to her knees, arms shielding her head. Her heart slammed against her ribs like it was trying to break free. She looked up just in time to see her father running toward her, boots hammering against the ice. Every step he took made a thunderous crack echo beneath him. He was still far. Too far. "Stop," she cried, voice shaking. But he didn't. Couldn't. He had waited so long for this moment. He would not lose it again. Soldiers without mercy. The captain shouted orders behind her. "Take him down. He's crossing the border." 3 rifles aimed directly at her father. "No." Amara screamed, scrambling to her feet. She ran between the guns and her father, arms spread wide like fragile wings trying to shield a lion. The captain cursed. The soldiers hesitated. No one wanted to shoot a child. "Get the girl out of the way," the captain barked. 2 soldiers grabbed her shoulders, yanking her backward across the ice. Her boots slipped, she kicked, fought, cried, but their grip only tightened. Her father roared her name. "Amara." She felt his voice more than heard it, like a spark burning through the cold. A desperate stand. With a sudden surge of strength fueled by terror and love, Amara tore free from their hold and sprinted back toward the river's center. The ice groaned beneath her, loud and dangerous. Her father reached out a hand. "Don't move," he yelled. But she did. She reached too, small hand trembling, heart screaming. Just 2 steps more. 2 steps to safety. Or disaster. The breaking point. A deafening crack shot through the silence like a lightning bolt. The ice beneath her fractured in a long, jagged line. She slipped, arms flailing, barely catching herself before plunging into the freezing abyss below. Her father's entire face twisted in terror. "Amara! Hold on!" He lunged forward. And the ice beneath him shattered completely. He disappeared into the black water with a violent splash. The world froze. "No!" Amara shrieked. She crawled toward the opening, fingers raw against the ice. Bitter cold water surged upward, stinging her face like 1,000 needles. She reached down blindly. "Papa! Please!" His hand shot up from the darkness, grasping, desperate. She grabbed it with both hands, pulling with every ounce of strength her small body possessed. "I won't lose you," she cried, voice cracking. But the river pulled harder. A father's last wish. Soldiers rushed closer, shouting, but they seemed distant, like blurry shadows. Her father's eyes locked onto hers. They were filled with every memory he never got to give her. He tried to speak, voice choking. "My brave girl." His grip loosened. "No, don't," she sobbed, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Don't let go." He reached with his free hand into his coat and pressed something into her palm, a cold metal shape. The wooden bird's missing twin. He smiled, a smile full of sorrow and love mingled together. "Live. For both of us." the ice cracked wider. His hand slipped from hers. He sank beneath the surface, the dark water swallowing him whole, leaving only silence. A cry against the winter. "Papa!" Her scream shattered the night. Soldiers finally reached her and pulled her away just as the river swallowed the last trace of him. She kicked and punched, but they were stronger. They dragged her back to safe ground while she cried until her voice broke. The captain stood stiffly, jaw clenched, watching the black water churn. He removed his hat, eyes lowered. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. But sorry could not warm her hands. Sorry could not fill the empty space in her heart. Sorry could not bring her father back from the frozen dark. Amara clutched the metal bird to her chest and fell to her knees in the snow. The river had given her the truth. And taken everything else. A silence that never ends. The soldiers left after making sure the river was blocked off with barricades. The village returned to restless sleep. But Amara remained. Snow piled on her shoulders and hair, melting with every tear. The frozen river gleamed beneath the moon like a cruel mirror. She whispered into the wind, "I will wait again. Every night. Until spring comes. Until you rise from the river's heart. Because hope, even shattered, still glows. Somewhere beneath the ice. A father's love still reached for her. And she would not let it drown." The wind howled like a hungry wolf through the ruins of the riverside village. Lena stood near the frozen river, her boots half buried in white powder, her scarf stiff with frost. The flickering lantern she carried cast long trembling shadows behind her, as if even the darkness hesitated to come closer. It was here, at this river, where she had once played with laughter in the summer sun. It was here she had stood crying, watching her brother march away to war. And this river, this cruel, silent river, had swallowed him beneath its ice. But not forever. Lena lifted her gaze to the horizon. Morning was coming. For the first time in months, the sky held a faint promise of color, soft pink bleeding into the harsh steel blue of night. A new day. And with it, the faintest thread of warmth. Her fingers curled around the small iron locket in her palm, her brother's locket. She remembered his voice. "If you're scared, hold on to this. I'll find my way back to you." She had clung to those words like a heartbeat. Behind her, the distant thunder of artillery echoed across the mountains. The war was still raging, but here, by the frozen river, something older and deeper was stirring. The ice beneath her boots flickered with a soft glow, pulsing like a heartbeat. She took a shaky breath. There was no turning back now. The river shifts. Cracks slithered across the surface of the frozen water, delicate and thin at first, like spiderwebs. Then deeper. Louder. The ground trembled under her feet. Lena staggered but kept her balance. Under the ice, shapes moved. Figures. Dozens of them. Ghosts of the war, soldiers lost beneath the river's icy coffin, stirring as if the river itself breathed them forth. Some wore broken helmets, some clutched rusted rifles, others simply reached upward with desperate hands that had forgotten warmth. Lena's heart raced, fear flooding her blood like lightning. But she did not run. She forced herself to kneel and placed the locket against the ice. "I'm here," she whispered. "Come back to me, please." The glowing shifted, like the light recognized her voice. A soft radiation of warmth spread through the ice, and suddenly, a face emerged, one she knew better than her own reflection. Emil. Her brother's eyes opened beneath the ice, blue and familiar, full of the courage she had once borrowed to survive. He reached up, his palm almost touching hers through the frozen barrier. Tears rolled down Lena's cheeks, freezing instantly under the cold wind. Emil. Her voice broke with a year's worth of grief. He spoke, his voice resonating not through air but through memory inside her head. You kept waiting. She nodded fiercely. I never gave up. I never will. His expression softened into a proud smile. Then you must also live. A sacrifice of winter. The river began to groan, low, mournful, ancient. Cracks widened into jagged scars. If the ice broke completely, the freezing water would swallow her whole. But Lena didn't move. I'll pull you out, she said desperately, pounding at the crystal barrier with bare fists. Her skin split instantly, bright red against pure white snow. Emil raised his hand, not to reach her, but to stop her. The river chose to save me once. But it won't let go of the others without a price. More soldiers rose beneath the ice. Young, old, enemy and ally alike. All trapped. All waiting. Not just Emil, hundreds. If I leave, they are forgotten. Lena shook her head wildly. I don't want to lose you again. His voice echoed, softer now. You won't. He lifted his other hand, pressing the locket back toward her. Somehow, impossibly, the metal phased upward through the ice until it lay against her trembling palm. The last gift. The last touch. Carry me here, he whispered. The glow began to fade. No. Lena cried, hitting the ice again, sobbing so hard her breath fractured into ice crystals. Stay with me. Please. But Emil's smile remained calm, full of warmth she could feel even in the brutal cold. Winter doesn't last forever. With those words, his form dissolved into shimmering flakes of light, swallowed gently by the river's glow. The other figures receded too, sinking back into their silent domain. The cracks slowly sealed themselves. The light died. The river returned to its deep, frozen quiet. And Lena was alone. A dawn that doesn't hurt. She collapsed forward, forehead resting on the cold surface, sobbing until she had no tears left. Only silence remained. Silence and memory. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. Then she felt it. Warmth. The first sunlight of the season broke across the horizon, golden and timid, touching her skin like a blessing. Snow glittered like diamonds under its glow. The air softened. The war noises faded far behind. Lena stood slowly, wiping her face with shaky hands. Her heart still ached, but in a way that made her stronger, not broken. She looked down at the locket in her palm, still warm, as if holding a heartbeat. She pressed it to her chest. I'll live, she whispered. For both of us. The river beneath her shimmered. Just once. Like a silent promise. Lena turned toward the village, toward the world waiting for her. She walked forward, leaving footprints in fresh snow, each step a vow. She would remember. She would survive. She would keep hope alive, even in the deepest winter. Because love, like rivers, always finds its way back home.